In the last two lectures, we talked about five fundamental things. That is, law is deeply connected to the human behavior. Law is not just written rules, it exists within the human society. It is created, interpreted, and enforced by the people. Therefore, understanding law requires understanding human psychology, emotions, and social interactions. We also discussed that people obey and break the law for psychological and social reasons. People follow law not only due to the fear of punishment, but also because of legitimacy, moral beliefs, social pressure, and habit. Similarly, people break laws due to factors like economic pressure, emotional impulses, trauma, social environment, and power dynamics, not simply bad character. Then we have spoken about legal decision making is influenced by human psychology and bias, like judges, police officers, and other legal authorities are human beings. Their decisions can be influenced by cognitive biases, social background, perception, and cultural experiences. So, this shows that law is not purely mechanical, it involves human judgment. You need to understand one thing, that law operates within a social structure shaped by power and inequality. So the legal institutions reflect society's inequalities in terms of wealth, status, and social position. So access to justice, legal representation, and fair treatment may differ depending on economic, social, and cultural factors, even though law promises equality. The last thing that we discussed in the last class that I remember is that law is both a tool of control and a tool of social transformation. Hmm? Law maintains order and regulates behavior, but it can also expand rights, protect dignity, and bring social change. As Dr. B.R. Ambedkar ji emphasized, education and law should empower people and broaden their thinking, not restrict it. Today's lecture is based on this particular topic, that why do people accept law? Understanding authority, legitimacy, and the rule of law. Okay, so let's start. See, firstly, you need to understand that why do people accept law? Why do people follow law? Even when no one is watching. So at first, many people think that answer is very simple. It's not. Many people think that people follow law because they are afraid of punishment. For example, people do not steal because they fear prison. People follow traffic rules because they fear fines. People do not harm others because they fear legal consequences. Yes, punishment is one reason. But please understand one thing, punishment is not the only reason. Okay? For example, imagine this situation. You are working alone on an empty road at night. There is a red traffic light. There are no police, no cameras, no other vehicles. And still many people stop at the red light. Why? Nobody is forcing them. Nobody is watching them. still they obey. This shows something very important. Law works not only because of force but also because of belief. People believe law should be followed, and this belief is very powerful. Without this belief, law cannot function properly. Please understand this thing. Now you need to ask yourself three questions, very vital questions. That have you ever followed a rule even when nobody was watching? If yes, why? And if the answer is yes, did you follow because of fear or because you believed it was right? And also another question, that what would happen if nobody believed in the law? Just think about it just for 1 minute. It's a very basic question. Just think about it. Have you ever followed a rule even when nobody was watching? Did you follow because of fear or because you believed it was right? What would happen if nobody believed in law? And this is a very vital question. This gives you a lot of answers. Right? So now let us understand this topic. That law becomes very powerful when people accept it very internally. So please understand one thing. Law exists in two ways. First is the external law, that includes police, courts, written rules, and punishment. This is the visible part of the law. The second is the internal law. It includes your belief in law, your respect for the law, your habit of following the law. This exists inside your mind. This internal part is very important because police cannot be everywhere, courts cannot watch everyone. Law becomes strong only when when people accept it inside their minds, and this is known as the internal acceptance of the law. So for example, a person may not steal not because police are present but because they believe stealing is wrong. So this shows that law is working inside their mind, and this is the strongest form of law because here it does not need any form of force. Okay, so now ask yourself, which is stronger, the force or the belief? Can police control millions of people all the time? What is the answer? What happens if people stop believing in law? These are some very vital questions that you need to ask yourself. Okay? Just a second. Yeah. So now you need to ask yourself again, why people accept law as something very valid. Okay, so this concept is known as authority. So what do you mean by authority? See, right to give orders and expect people to follow them is authority. Authority is kind bit different from the force, obviously, but you need to understand the difference. See, force means someone makes you do something using fear. Like a robber points a gun and asks for money. You're giving the money because you have the fear. This is force. This is not authority. Now, what is authority? Like a judge gives a decision, police follow the decision. Why? Because the police accept that the judge has the authority. This authority comes from law and the social acceptance, not from personal force. This is very important. Law depends on the authority, not just the force. Force alone, Force alone cannot create a stable society. Authority creates stability. Like, for example, do you follow a teacher because of fear or because you accept their authority? What is the difference between a robber and a police officer? Why do people accept court decisions? These are three fundamental questions that you need to ask yourself. So I would say one thing here, that please write two examples. You can write this thing in your copy, and after the end of the class you can send it to me. One example of force and one example of authority, and then you need to explain the difference. This is your task. Okay. Now let us discuss the top. This is very important. Actually. Legitimacy. See, when we say the word legitimacy, what do we mean? We mean that people believe law has the right to control the behavior. So, in simple words, people accept law as proper and valid. Now, when law has legitimacy, people obey voluntarily. People respect the law. People trust the law. Law becomes strong. But when the law loses the legitimacy, people stop trusting the law. People stop respecting the law. Society becomes unstable. The legitimacy exists inside the people's mind. It cannot be forced easily. It must be earned. Law earns legitimacy when people believe the law is fair, equal, just, and honest. So, if people believe that the law is unfair, the legitimacy becomes weak. Now, here consider the three questions again. Do you respect rules more when they are fair? Ask yourself. What happens if law protects only powerful people? Can unfair law be respected? Ask yourself. These are three fundamental questions, and you need to deep dive into this thing. Now, when we say the trust in legal institutions, what do we mean? Huh? So, you need to understand that legal institutions include courts, police, government, and legal system. These institutions maintain the law, but their power depends on the trust. If people trust the courts, they accept court decisions. If people do not trust courts, they may reject the decisions. So, the trust creates legitimacy. Legitimacy creates obedience, and obedience creates order. And please understand, order creates stability. This is how law maintains the society. As Dr. B.R. Ambedkar used to believe, that law should protect people and create justice. Law should not create fear alone. Law should create confidence. People should feel protected, not threatened. This makes law meaningful. Now, in regard of this topic, let me ask you three questions. Why is trust important for courts? Can law function without the trust? How does trust make law stronger? These are the three fundamental questions. Okay? Now, so, as you can see, the title is Rule of Law, the law is above everyone. So, what do you mean by rule of law? The rule of law means the law is above everyone. Nobody is above the law. And here, this includes citizens, police, judges, government, leaders. Everyone must follow the law. This protects people from abuse of power. If the law is above everyone, society becomes fair. If some people are above the law, society becomes unfair. So the rule of law creates equality. And without the rule of law, power becomes dangerous. Now, again, in the regard of this particular thing, ask yourself three important questions. You can write it up. Should leaders follow the law? What happens if powerful people do not believe the law? How does rule of law protect ordinary people? You need to ask yourself. You need to ask yourself. See, whenever you are reading any topic, okay, after reading the topic for at least a 1 page or 2 page, you need to answer 6 questions at least related to that whatever you have read in those 2 pages, because then it keeps a check on you that whether you have understood the topic or not, right? So, although we have discussed a bit, but still I would want to discuss again. See, human beings need stability to live peacefully. Now, what do you mean by stability? What do you mean by stability? It means predictability, safety, order, and no constant fear. So, law helps create stability. Let us see how. Imagine a world without law. In such a world, anyone can take your property, anyone can harm you, anyone can cheat you, nobody is responsible. You will feel unsafe all the time. You will feel the fear. You will not trust anyone. Society will become unstable. Now imagine a world with the law. So here in this world, your property is protected, your rights are protected, harmful actions are punished, and yes, disputes are resolved by the courts. You feel safer, you can plan your future, you can trust the society. This is known as stability. Law creates this stability. Imagine from your, you know, daily life. You go to the shop, you give the money, right? You expect to receive the product. Why do you trust this process? Because law protects the transaction. If the shopkeeper cheats you, you can complain. This creates confidence. Without the law, trust becomes weak. Without the trust, society cannot function. This is a fundamental thing. You need to understand this thing. Again, in regard to this particular matter, you need to ask yourself again that can society exist peacefully without the law? What do you think? How does law make daily life predictable? Do you feel safe? Uh, because the law exists. Do you feel safe? You need to answer that thing. If you feel that law is there but it is not working properly, write it up. Write it up. Now, let us see one very important thing, that what happens when people stop believing in the law. This is a very important psychological question. As we discussed uh, just a few minutes ago, law depends on legitimacy. Legitimacy depends on belief. But what happens if people stop believing in law? Law becomes weak. Even if law exists on paper, it becomes ineffective, and hence creating a serious problems. So let us understand this matter very slowly. When people lose belief in law, they stop respecting the law. They stop trusting legal institutions, and they may start breaking rules, and this may create disorder, and this situation is very dangerous because law cannot function through force alone. Because the force has limits. Police are few, people are many, and law needs cooperation. Without cooperation, law becomes powerless. For example, in real life, if people believe police are unfair, they may stop cooperating. If people believe courts are slow or biased, they may stop trusting the courts. This weakens the legal authority, this weakens the society. So you can write three questions. Please take your copies. And you can write three questions again. Not three, two. Write it down. Why is belief important for law? And secondly, what happens if people trust criminals more than law? Let me say it again. Why is belief important for law? And what happens if people trust criminals more than the law? Right. Okay. So now let us talk about this thing. So law exists not only outside but also inside human minds, and I think it was discussed in the point 2 only. But again, so this is one of the most important psychological idea. See, law does not exist only in books. Law also exists inside human minds. This means people develop internal control, and this is called self regulation. Now, what do you mean by self-regulation? So, it means you control your behavior without the external force. You do not steal, not because police are present, but because your mind tells you that stealing is wrong. And this is the internal law as discussed. Again, I am saying this is very strong than the external law because it works even when nobody is watching. This is how the society functions smoothly. Without internal control, the society will collapse for sure. In regard to this matter, and also discussed like few minutes back, I would give you two questions here. But before that, I would ask you people to ask yourself, take around 30 seconds, that think about a moment when you have stopped yourself from doing something wrong. Think about a moment. You knew that that thing was wrong. And now think about that. Ask yourself, why did I stop at that point of time? Was it a fear or an internal belief? It can be anything. It can be anything. Write it down in your copy. Ask yourself. And this is very important. See, when you are asking yourself, that which means self-reflective exercises on any particular topic, you get to know about that particular topic much better. Don't do just normal. Don't do that kind of shallow reading. Go into detail. Try to connect with that particular topic. The moment you do these self-reflecting exercises and you try to ask yourself certain questions regarding those matters, you get a clear picture. You get to understand those topics better. Okay? Okay. Now, let us understand this thing. So, the chapter title is Authority Becomes Strong When People See It as Fair. So, I am reiterating it. Okay. So people accept authority when they when they believe authority is fair. Fairness, creates a kind of legitimacy. Creates, legitimacy creates obedience, and obedience creates order. Now, if the authority becomes unfair, legitimacy becomes weak. And when legitimacy becomes weak, obedience decreases. And this creates the instability. This shows something very important, that law must be fair to remain powerful. Not just powerful through the force, but powerful through acceptance. And this is we call as the psychological power. Psychological power is stronger than the physical power because it works through belief. Now, if a teacher treats all the students very fairly, students respect the teacher. But if a teacher treats students unfairly, students lose respect. The same applies to law. Respects create authority. Fear alone cannot create that authority. There must be a certain kind of respect. So now here comes a very important question, that or the topic, the interconnection between the law and the psychology. See, law is not just about the rules. It's a psychological system. It depends on belief, trust, fairness, legitimacy, authority. It works through the human mind. not just through physical force. This shows why psychology is essential to understand the law. And please understand one thing: without psychology, law cannot be fully understood. So, as I said, that law exists in both ways, outside and inside. So when it comes to outside, it's the rules, courts, police. When it comes to inside, it beliefs, acceptance, conscience. Both are necessary. Both are necessary. So, you know, so here are very important things that has to be, what is the summary of today's lecture? Firstly, people follow law not only because of fear, but also because of belief. Authority means accepted power, not forced power. Legitimacy means people believe law is valid and fair. Law creates stability, safety, and order in the society, and law becomes weak if people stop believing in it. Law exists inside human minds as a internal control, and fairness increases the legitimacy and strengthens the law. And lastly, the law and psychology are deeply connected. So this is the end of today's lecture. I hope